I bought a Leica Q3 and in today's video I want to discuss why you maybe shouldn't. That might sound weird because I just told you that I bought one myself, but please bear with me. Back in 2015, when Leica announced the original Q Type 116, I was one of the first ones who bought a copy on the first day it got introduced. Ever since, I took the camera everywhere I went. From the desert in Iran to major metropolitans like New York to remote islands in the South Pacific. It has been my go-to digital camera for street photography. It never let me down and most likely I shot around 100 to 200,000 photos with my camera, in sometimes less than ideal conditions. And in case you are not aware, the camera had no weather sealing whatsoever. Now, when the Q2 got announced back in 2019, I had no plans to upgrade because the changes didn't seem that beneficial to me and the camera remained mostly unchanged and the only real difference was the 47 megapixel sensor. Back then, a lot of people asked me if they should upgrade or not, and for the most part I recommended to stick with the OG Q or even buy one used instead of a brand new Q2. Sure, the Q2 has better dynamic range over the original Q and also a higher resolution sensor. And on the OG Q, when you push the shadows a little bit too hard in post, you will get some really nasty looking banding. However, I use the camera not just for street photography, also for a lot of professional work, where I sometimes had to shoot in harsh conditions and in very low light situations. And I had never ever a client that complained about the image quality of my shots that I delivered. If a camera is good enough for that, then it surely is more than good enough for personal work, I would say. Yes, some people might now argue, well, that would also be true for other cameras and that you don't necessarily need an expensive Leica Q. Fair enough, but all the Leica Q cameras are unmatched for what they are and the feature set is very unique. But of course, if you can't take advantage of those or you don't even know what they are, then it might be better to maybe look somewhere else and get a different camera instead. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has different needs and thankfully there are plenty of cameras to choose from. With the Q3, things have changed because now there's a substantial difference between this and the original Q Type 116 and also the Q2. But I think this camera caters to a certain type of user and I would consider myself one of those. I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit later on. I got asked by a bunch of people if they should upgrade from the Q2 or even from the Q2 monochrome. First of all, I don't see why you would even think about going from a Q2 monochrome to a Leica Q3. If you want to shoot black and white, of course, stick to your Q2 monochrome. Yes, the Q3 got better in low light over the Q2, which is very noticeable, but the Q2 monochrome still has the edge and I would estimate it's easily 1 to 2 stops better when it comes to high ISO. Sure, if you want to shoot color and you're looking for a Q with the best possible image quality, then you have to get the Q3, that's for sure. But if you would convert your files to black and white anyway, then don't get a Q3 and you're better off waiting for a Q3 monochrome. At some point, I'm pretty sure it will come. And with the lack of the Bayer filter on the Q2 monochrome, the sensor should easily match the Q3 60 megapixel sensor in terms of sharpness. Now, what's new and improved on the Q3? Like mentioned before, it has a newer sensor with less noise and better dynamic range. That might be tempting, but the Q2 already has a great sensor and 47 megapixels, that's more than enough and more than most people would ever need. And how often do you even shoot in low light? It has better autofocus. Yes, it is better and especially tracking is now finally usable. That being said, even on the OG Q, single autofocus was fast enough and worked very well for me. The upgrade that is the most obvious one is of course the tilting screen. Funny enough, since I've gotten the camera, I haven't really used that feature that often. Probably because I'm still used to not even having one. Some people even think that the camera looks worse because of the screen, since it protrudes out, and I agree, but it's not really bothering me. Then there is the video mode that has been improved significantly, and in fact, parts of this video have been filmed on the Q3. But I think that there's only a small percentage of typical Q users that would even consider using a Q for video. But we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Besides these changes, there are a few other things that changed, like the higher res viewfinder or the button layout on the back. And now the camera has HDMI and a Type-C port. Also, you can charge the battery wirelessly if you buy the corresponding grip, but to me, that is more or less just a gimmick and I would definitely never use that. If you want to support the channel, check out my street photography zines and maybe also my color profiles for Lightroom. They also work with the Q3. But I'm considering maybe bringing out a new set of color profiles specifically made for the Q3. But hey, let me know if you're interested in something like that. Now, why should you not buy a Leica Q3? Well, if you have already a Q2, then the upgrade is probably not worth it if you were already happy with the camera before the Q3 got announced. If you have felt the urge to switch to the new one since its release, then it's probably only fear of missing out and you're better off sticking with your Q2, to be honest. On the other hand, if you're still rocking a Q Type 116 and you can benefit from the new features and upgrades, then it would be a good upgrade, I think. But if you were thinking about upgrading because your camera is getting a little bit old and you fear that it might break, therefore you want something newer, then you could also consider a Q2 for around half the price of a Q3. The Q3 is a great camera and by any means, if you have the budget, of course, go for it. You see, when the camera got announced, or even a little before that, when all the specs got leaked, I was really surprised about one thing specifically, and that is the video features in this camera. I think it's no coincidence that we've seen such a massive bump in the video department of the camera. Before, almost no one used the Q2 for video, but I think that will change with the Q3, and Leica did that on purpose to target the so-called content creators. Vloggers or whatever you might call them. For me, the Q3 is first and foremost a camera for street photography, but now I can also use it for video and that opens up a whole new world. That is basically what won me over and it helped to make the decision to switch over to the new camera. Also, my OG Q was 8 years old and at some point it would have died on me. That might not be a massive problem when shooting for personal stuff, but on a professional job it would probably suck big time if the camera fails. Also, since I'm doing YouTube videos, it makes sense to have a new camera because people want to watch content shot with the latest and greatest. That's probably the reason you're watching the video, I guess. But just for fun, let me give you 3 bonus reasons not to upgrade. Number 1, even if you want to upgrade, it might be very difficult to find one, at least for the foreseeable future. And number 2, if you want to upgrade because you like the new accessories, like this new brass lens hood for instance, well, the good news is that except for the soft release, they all work on the Q2 and on the OG Q, so you could in theory upgrade your old Q with these and make it look like a Q3. And finally, number 3, the camera has issues and it might take 1 or 2 firmware updates to get those fixed. For instance, mine froze 2 or 3 times since I got it and I had to take out the battery to restart the camera. And I'm not the only one having that issue. Alright guys, that's it. That's it for today's video. That's my reasons why you might not want to upgrade to a Q3, or maybe you upgrade because there's good reasons to do it, but there's also good reasons not to do it. So yeah, that's it for today's video. If you liked it, you know what to do. Smash the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and we will see each other very, very soon in the next one. Until then, auf Wiedersehen.